Very good afternoon to everyone who's joining us here today. We'll take a couple of minutes for everyone to join in and start sharp at 12. A very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for your patience and just a couple of one more minute and we will get started with our much awaited webinar. Thank you for the overwhelming response, everyone. All right. So we've crossed 100 participants, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will be pouring in because we've got an overwhelming 470 plus registrations. So I believe everyone will be joining in here with us very soon. So, once again, a very good afternoon, and I warmly welcome you all to today's much awaited webinar on India's new labor codes, impact on industry and employees. I am Shanmitha Basakhetre, Vice President, Marketing Communications and Sales at Prompt Personnel, and I will be your host for today's session. For those of you who are new to Prompt, we are a leading HR company in India providing end to end HR solutions to businesses over 3 decades. At Prompt, labor law compliance is at the core of what we do. So, today is particularly very meaningful for us. So, thank you so much for joining us. We're very, very excited to have you here to decode one of the most significant shifts in India's labor law landscape in decades. To put it in perspective, out of 44 central labor acts, 12 acts have been repealed and 29 acts have been amalgamated into four codes that we will be covering here today. Implemented on 21st November 2025, these codes aim to balance flexibility for employers with protection for workers while also reducing compliance burdens. The new labor codes mark a transformative moment that will reshape how businesses operate, how workplaces function, and how employees are going to be governed going forward. We also want to take this opportunity and we are very excited to introduce to you the new brand identity for our labor law compliance services, Comply 360 Degree. For over 28 years, we have helped businesses stay compliant, and with this new identity, we are taking that legacy forward with a stronger and more holistic 360-degree compliance approach. It's now my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers for today. Joining us here with us is Mr. Suhas Basakhetre. He's the Managing Director and founder of Prompt Personnel. With over 35 years of expertise in labor law and industrial relations, he has guided organizations through complex compliance challenges, represented them before various statutory authorities, and contributed to shaping the HR and IR landscape, as well as he's been the founding member of EPILPA. Under his leadership, Prompt manages compliances across 28 states, 5 union territories for almost 100 plus organizations. For over the past 3 decades, he has helped shape the company into a leading HR and compliance partner in India. We also have with us here today as the second speaker joining us, Mrs. Yashashri Kulkarni, General Manager, Labor Law Compliance at Prompt Personnel. With nearly 2 decades of experience, she brings deep expertise in labor law and HR operations. She's also a certified POSH trainer and has held key leadership roles across leading financial institutions and MNCs, strengthening their HR and compliance frameworks. She now leads Prompt Labor Law Compliance Division, leveraging her practical expertise to manage end to end compliance for clients. We promise that the next 1 hour will be very insightful, engaging, packed with practical key takeaways. And we're confident by the end of the session, you'll be more informed and confident to implement these changes in the new year. So, to quickly start off, I would like to invite Mr. Suhas to address the audience and get started with the webinar.
Thank you, Shanmitha. Good afternoon, viewers. It's a real pleasure being here to decode the labor laws and the labor codes. The sudden announcement of implementation of labor codes has created havoc amongst the industry and the workforce, which is quite natural. However, let me give a breather to most of you that you would have otherwise read in the newspapers that though the implementation date given is 21st November 2025, without state rules, the implementation cannot be done. The enforcement machinery isn't prepared yet. This could take this could take anywhere between 60 days to 90 days, and as a process, state government will have to notify these rules in the official gazette and invite suggestions and objections. Post that only they could incorporate the changes and then publish the rules in the official gazette mentioning the exact date of implementation. So relax that way. Besides that, viewers, as we speak today about the labor codes, you would have read in the newspapers about the nationwide resentment by various groups, trade unions, who have approached the courts and the central government, asking them to revoke and change certain provisions of the labor laws, labor codes. And as it gets intensified, it could further delay the implementation of labor codes. Nevertheless, friends, whatever it is, labor codes are here to stay. Anyhow, therefore, today we shall share the highlights of the labor codes and its impact on industry as well as the workforce. It's difficult to decode all the provisions and the various sections in 1 hour's time, but we'll try to make more sense to it and give you far better clarity and how it can impact the industry and workforce. So shall we go ahead now to the agenda, please? As we have set the agenda, we will cover these 5 parts of it. Objectives of new labor codes, which I'll explain. Understanding of the new labor codes, the penalties under new labor codes, impact of industry and employees, and the way forward. Next slide, please. So, all of you must have been wondering as to all of a sudden how industry or how the central government has announced this. What are the objectives and what has gone into it? All of a sudden, 44 labor laws to 29 and 29 to 4 now. So there are 5, clear objectives that are there, which must be taken into account, and we'll get to clarity. There is an amalgamation of 29 labor laws. Many provisions are simplified now. Therefore, it is also called labor reforms. As we have seen in GST, similarly, the labor reforms are talked about. Ease of compliance for employers. The multiple definitions are rationalized now. You'll be surprised to note the number of sections and provisions are reduced from 1,228 to mere 480. And that's a big shift. Digitization process. The entire country, in any case, is already moving towards a digitalization. So, how come the labor law will stay behind? The compliances, the inspections will be done online, and no more paperwork will be entertained at any given time. The balanced framework for employers and employees. The labor codes have tried to take care of both the industry as well as workforce. As we move forward, you'll realize the government really did a good job in many cases. And the final effective enforcement. Friends, complete shift from Inspector Raj to, uh, Inspector Facilitator Raj, a sort of approach. So welcome move, I must say. Means the enforcement officers who are called, facilitators will be helping and advising industries to comply the various provisions of the labor codes. It's a complete shift from cop to coach, I must say, and it's really going to be very very interesting how it will shape up. So viewers, as we move forward, the highlights of the codes, more and more clarity will be seen now. So now I would like to invite my colleague, a learned advocate Yashaswi Kulkarni, the GM compliance of prompt, to take this forward. She will present three labor codes, and I shall present the fourth one, that is the industrial relations code, penalties, the impact, and I'll conclude with the way forward for the industry to prepare the new era. And so thank you very much. See you for the time being. I'll be back soon. Over to you, YK.
Can we have the next slide, please? So good afternoon, viewers. I'm Yashaswi Kulkarni. Now I will be, for the next 15-20 minutes, taking you all through the three important labor codes: the Code of Wages, the Social Security Code, and the OSH Code. To begin with, the Code of Wages. The Code of Wages has amalgamated four important laws relating to the salaries or the wages, which is the crux of the entire HR system: the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Wages Act, the Payment of Bonus Act, and the Equal Remuneration Act. So these four laws, which are dealing with the salary structure, the wages, the CTC structures, the timelines for time period, now they are clubbed and brought under one single act, the Code of Wages. Moving on to the next slide, let us understand in detail what are the changes that have come via this code, which did not exist in the past. So friends, as we all are aware that the definition of wages was always a debatable issue as far as the HR personnel were concerned. We had a definition of wages differently in the PF Act, ESIC Act, Bonus Act, Gratuity Act, Industrial Dispute Act, and various other acts. Somewhere it was only basic, somewhere it was basic plus DA, somewhere it was the entire gross salary. And so, in the case of any kind of labor-related dispute, there was always an ambiguity in the minds of the courts as well as the adjudicating authorities as to which definition of wages is the right one and which needs to be considered. So the most important change that has been brought via this code is this ambiguity has been finally curtailed. It has been put to an end. There is a very crystal clear definition of wages that has been given. On the subsequent slide, we will be understanding what is this definition of wages, how it is going to help us in the future to understand the wage structure and how we need to build the salaries in the forthcoming years or for the next financial years. To give you a crux of it, now all the allowances should not be more than 50%, and out of the total gross salary, 50% has to be designed as basic, DA, and retaining allowance on which the provident fund will be calculated, and not more than 50% can be any allowances by whatever nomenclature you put. Also, there were cases where salaries used to be paid in kind. So there have been industries which used to pay food grains or maybe other perquisites or voucher cards, gift cards by virtue of salary. Not more than 15% of any of these kind wages or perquisites are henceforth allowed as a part of the fixed salary components. The second important change that has been brought is the fixation of the national floor wages. We all are aware that minimum wages change from state to state, geography to geography, and industry to industry in India. And hence, whenever there is a dispute, always it comes and stops on the question of what was the correct minimum wages at any given point in time. Also, this minimum wages were always applicable only in case of scheduled employments. Many of the unorganized sectors or unscheduled employment was always left out from the definition of the minimum wages. So now with the code of wages, there is a concept of the national floor wages or a uniform minimum wages across the nation. There is a lot of myth or a lot of misconception which exists currently in the industry that because of this there will be a reduction in the current salary structure or the current minimum wages that people are drawing. But friends, let me tell you that always whenever there is a change in legislature, it is always a prospective one, and it is never derogatory to the rights of employees. It is always beneficial which is there for the employee. So there will not be any reduction anywhere. If the wages which are levied going further as minimum wages are lesser than the earlier existing higher minimum wages, there will not be any changes. Similarly, provisions relating to the payment of the salary date. As we all are aware, in the current scenario, for more than 1,000 employees or for large conglomerates where more thousands of employees work, it is okay to pay salary on the 10th day of the month. But now across industry, there will be a standard 7 days period after the end of the month when salary has to pay. That is whenever the wage month ends 30th, 31st or 29th, within the 7 days from the closing of the wage month, now the salaries have to be paid to the full-time employees, contractual employees, as well as the service providers. So there will be a stringent implementation of this, which is again a beneficial legislation for the employees. Another provision that has come up with the code of wages is the settlement of full and final or the dues after separation. So here in the code of wages, it has brought a very aggressive amendment which says that from within 2 days from the from the date of separation, the final settlement has to be done. I guess technically this may be a bit difficult for the employers to implement because we all are aware as HR personnel what are the challenges, what are the components that we need to calculate whilst we are doing the final settlement. It is not just the salaries, but we have to work on the leave encashment. We have to look at the asset recoveries. We have to look at the loan or the fine recoveries, if any. So I guess this is a bit humanly difficult now, and there may be a lot of procedural changes internally that the HR personnel will have to take care of if they have to adhere to this timeline given by the government. Then coming to the next point of authorized deductions. Now there is a limitation of only 50% of wages that can be deducted at any point in time by virtue of deductions. Earlier, this amount could go up to 75%, but now this has been capped up to 50% only. Similarly, the payment of bonus, which was not very stringently monitored across the industry in case of contractual labor, now the bonus payment to the contractual employees has been made mandatory by virtue of this code. Can we have the next slide, please? Next slide. As I mentioned in the point number 1, that to explain you how the new salary structure has been envisaged via the code, we have given one example. Now, if you look at the slide over here, we have given components like basic, HRA, conveyance, special allowance, and the total remuneration. Now, by virtue of the definition of section 2Y in the wages code, here only basic DA and retaining allowance can form the first part, that is the first 50% of the salary on which the PF will be calculated. But if any other allowance other than these three allowance, be it the HRA, conveyance, mobile allowance, or the electricity, water allowance in a premises given by the company or a company given accommodation, if it exceeds more than 50%, then up to the amount of 50%, one of the allowance will be pushed back to the basic salary, and then the total of basic of 50% will be considered as a basic. So if you read through the lines below, if the total salary is 50%, there will be an exclusion of HRA and conveyance allowance, which is up to 18,000 over here in the current scenario. The total permissible exclusion is up to 50,000 will be 25,000. So if the basic and HRA are not 25,000, then any one of the allowance which forms a part of the rest of the exclusion will be pushed back to the basic, and this is how the basic will be calculated. I will not ponder much on this slide because if we decide to discuss it, it will go for hours together. Later on, if there are some queries, we can see in the Q&A section. Can we move to the next slide? Here again, another similar kind of an example is given. If time permits, at the end of the session, we can have a detailed deliberation on this slide. Next slide, please.
You can take 1 minute on this, Vishashri.
Yeah. So again, this is a second example. As far as the definition of wages is concerned, here again, the basic has been shown. The total salary is 40,000. Basic is given as 10,000. DA and other allowances 3,500. And the other allowances which are shown, the HRA, the conveyance, bonus, PF, if you have ESI or any other allowance, all these are exclusions. So whatever are the statutory deductions and the allowances other than the basic, DA and retaining allowance hereby are called as excluded allowances. So the definition of wages under the 2Y under the wages code, if you see very categorically crystal clear, they have mentioned excluded and included components of a salary structure. So only 3 components are given as included allowed components, whereas most of the other things are excluded from the deduction of the PF or the ESI or the gratuity or the bonus. Okay, again, we have tried to explain it as making it as easy as possible. Moving on to the next slide. Now coming to the Code of Social Security, this is one of the code which has brought most of the special legislations for various categories of employment under its garb. So we had a lot of acts which were for very specific sectors of employees like cine workers. We had the building and construction workers, plantation workers. We never had any laws, in the past for the unorganized sectors. Even to mention the dock workers, BD workers, all these have been brought under the garb of the Social Security Code. Though there is no mention of acts which are very state specific, like in Maharashtra, we have the Mathadi Kamgar or we have the Security Guards Act. As of now, this code is silent on that. Apart from that, the social security legislations that is the PF, the ESIC, gratuity and maternity benefit have been brought under the coverage of this code. Yes, sir?
Yes, Shri. The Mathari Workers Act, the Shop and Establishment Act, and Maharashtra Regulation of Trade Union and Unfair Labor Practices Act. These acts will continue to be in force until they are repealed. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
So all acts which are very state specific to a subject, these codes have not brought them under them. They will continue their implementation till there is a specific notification of their repealment. Moving on to the next slide. So what does the Social Security Code do for us? First and foremost, the Social Security Code brings under its control or brings under its ambit a huge number of gig or the platform workers, which up till now were called as the unorganized sector. We did not have any laws governing this sector. We did not have any schemes of social security or benefit covering these sectors. With the change in the nature of employment or with the change in the kind of work scenario, we have a large workforce who are working as gig or platform workers. All are Ola, Uber drivers, the Zepto, Zomato, Swiggy, delivery platform, all the delivery girls and boys, all are called as the gig workers. And as of now, in the current scheme of laws, there is no social security scheme for these employees. So by the virtue of the Social Security Code 2020, there are provisions wherein they will be given accident coverage, health coverage, maternity insurance, old age coverage, etc. via a social security fund. And how do we get the funds to fund the social security fund? So there is a proposition that there will be a contribution made by the aggregators of about 1 or 2%, which will be capped to a maximum of 5%. And by virtue of this contribution, there will be a funding done to the social security fund, from wherein all the benefits for this sector of workmen will come. Again, there is a lot of myth about what will happen to the EPFO and pension scheme. The EPFO, the pension scheme, continue for 1 year after the commencement of the code. Also, there are 9 schemes under the EPFO which are currently running. As of now, they will continue for the next 1 year. Similarly, what we are calling that these codes are bringing in the ease of compliance. So the most important change that has been brought down by the virtue of this code is a single online registration system. In current scheme of affairs, we have to take the PF registration from a separate body, ESIC registration from a separate body. Again, if we want any other registrations under the various labor laws like the LWF fund state-wise, again there are separate bodies wherein the registrations have to be carried on. But once this code is fully implemented, or once the rules under this code comes, there will be a single window through which all these registrations can be obtained by prospective employers. This will bring ease of compliance, and they do not have to run from pillar to post to start up their new organizations for obtaining these registrations. Then we spoke about inspector cum facilitators, or we have been speaking a lot about doing away with the inspector Raj. Now the inspectors have been given a larger role of not just inspecting, but facilitating appropriate compliances via tech-driven systems and enhanced transparency. The inspector now is not just a watchdog who will compel people, who will do a fault finding job, but he will be more a guide, more as a coach to the employers, who will help them to do the right kind of compliances at the right time. So his role has been redefined by the virtue of these codes. There is a lot of myth and misconception that is flying around the industry that now the employer contributions will go, they will rise steeply by the virtue of these codes. But as far as the news is there, or as far as the whatever we have come across, we can say that right now there will be no changes as far as the PF and the ESIC contributions are concerned. They remain to be 12%. Also, the judgment which is there on the 15,000 cap, as of now there is no change. So even if the basic salary goes to 50% of the total wages, we can still take the benefit of the 15,000 capping under the PF Act. Coming to the next point, the limitation period. The limitation period for inquiries for the past period has now been made only 5 years. In the past, we are aware that for an unlimited period, the records were being dug by the authorities, which would cause a lot of harassment to the employers. Now there is a limitation only up to the past 5 years. There can be inquiries of the past data or past non-compliances. Also, the power to open cases suo motu has now been abolished. In cases of EPFO, where there's a 7A inquiry or there is an unpaid PF, during the investigation, instead of 75% of amount being deposited, now only 25% of the amount has to be deposited. Again, this is a welcome move as far as the employers are concerned. Moving on to the next slide.
Yashashree, just a moment, please. So I'd like to just request to all the viewers to kindly, be patient and put in your questions at the end. We'll try to keep a good Q&A session as it's distracting the rest of the viewers, please. Thank you so much. Yeah, Yashashree.
Yeah, now coming to the Occupational Health and Working Conditions Code 2020. Again, under this code also we have a large number of legislations which have been amalgamated and brought under one single code, which primarily governed the working conditions in various type of industries. So primarily we always looked at the Factories Act, the Contract Labor Act, and the Shops Act across the countries, which gave guidance as to how the safety, health, and welfare of the workmen should be taken care of. But apart from that, there were various legislations which were very specific to specific industries, like the Mines Act governing the working conditions of mine workers, Working Journalist Act governing the working conditions only of the journalists, then the Motor Transport Workers Act, which governed the working conditions as far as the drivers in various industries were covered, so forth and so on. So now, by the virtue of this code, we have a very specific and similar guidelines which are given as far as the safety and the working conditions of workmen are concerned. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So the first welcome change which has been brought in by the virtue of this code is that it is mandatory to issue appointment letters to each and everyone devoid of their designation, devoid of their cadre. We are all aware that in most of the blue collared sector or in unorganized sectors, appointment letter issuance was not mandated. It was appointment letters were issued by choice of both the employer as well as the employee. By virtue of these appointment letter, now a formal history of everybody's work will be tracked. There will be a formalization to the terms and conditions between the employer as well as employees. And this is again a beneficial move as far as the workmen are concerned. Employers to maintain safe working environment and to provide annual health checkups. We all are aware that in the current scenario, the Factories Act does mandate health checkup when the employees are working in industries which are open to occupational hazards. Also, as far as the current Factories Act is concerned, it is mandatory to do an eye checkup of employees beyond the age of 40. But there is hardly any compliance or hardly any mandate around that. We do not see these provisions being very stringently implemented across the industry, but by virtue of this code, now there will be a stringent mandate to implement these provisions. This health checkup has to be free for the employees and on an annual basis. That has to be mandatorily done, and there will be compliances around it. Coming to the provisions of overtime. Overtime will now apply to employees as well as to supervisors. Now, overtime in the current scenario also does exist, but it has been now more formalized. There will be an 8-hour work week, that is a 8-hour work day, and a 48-hour work week. And there is a flexibility given to employers to have a spread over up to 12 hours, and the remaining 4 hours per day, there will be an overtime that will be paid at the double of the rate of the ordinary wages per hour. Of course, there has to be a consent from the employees to extend his work hour when it is, when the actual execution has to be done. Inspector come facilitator to carry on transparent track-driven inspections. We have seen this in the last slide as well. Safety and Occupational Health Survey. Again, by virtue of this act, by virtue of this code, now there will be mandatory health surveys carried on by the state authorized officers at workplaces to check the occupational hazards. Pan-India single license. Again, this is a very much welcome move. In the current scenario, especially staffing companies like us, they have a huge struggle to obtain contract labor licenses in various states and various locations. There are different authorities. The fee structure is different. The capping for contract labor again is different in different states. Some places it is 5, some it is 20, some it is 50. Now again, there have been changes. There is a proposition to make it 50 across all states. And if there are employers who are pan-India contract providers or pan-India, they are providing their workforce to a single corporate or to a single principal employer, they can apply for a single nationwide license. And this is surely a welcome move, which eases the compliance to a great extent for many of the staffing companies or large employers. Night shift working for women. Currently, also in many industries, we see women working at night, especially in the BPO sector or the hospital or nursing sector or food industry. But now this night shift working has been more formalized. They have gone to the extent of allowing women employees to work in factories as well as mines also at night, that is between dawn to dusk, but expressly after a written consent from the female employee, and only when there are safety conditions which are very vehemently monitored at the workplaces. Migrant workers can access benefit across the states with Aadhaar link system. So as we are aware, in the current scheme of things, the migrant workers were never able to have access any of the benefits via the various beneficial legislation or the social security legislations because of various reasons. In the current scheme of affairs, now there is a proposition to ensure that via the Aadhaar linking of these migrant workers, they also will have an equal right to access the various social security benefits and scheme, and they also can form a part of the larger workforce who can avail the various social security benefits. Procedural offenses decriminalized and made compoundable. So, friends, again, there is a lot of myth, or there is again a lot of opposition from trade unions for the decriminalization or compounding of offenses. So, friends, let me tell you, in the current scheme of things, the offenses that have been made compounding are only procedural compliances. So, where there was a provision of criminal penalty for procedural violations in the past, which was very much torturesome for the employers, or it was very much harsh with the employers. Only when there are procedural non-compliances, now you can compound them, or there is a fine or a penalty for that. For any violations which are causing health hazards, safety hazards to the employees, still are criminally punished, still are having are still are punished with the jail term. So this is what is there in the new scheme of things as far as the occupational health, safety and working conditions code is concerned. Now I would again pass on the mic to my senior Suhas Basakhetre for the next code, that is the IR code.
Thank you, Yashashree. It's been wonderful listening to you and understanding various highlights. Just to break some monotony and also to answer some curious questions, since we have enough time on hand, I would like Shanmitha to pick up 3 or 4 questions which we can quickly, answer here, and then again I move to IR code.
Sure.
So that nothing will remain
Yeah.
unattended, right?
So, Manas Singh asks the question, what shall be the impact of Contract Labour Act on core activities, as the core activities are defined and prohibited to employ contract labor, is
So
what he
again, I'm
says.
telling you, if I may,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
see, the perennial nature of work as defined in the existing labor law, CLRA, will continue unless the state rules define otherwise. The status quo will be maintained. So let's wait for another 90 days or maybe more than that. The clarity will be seen. Till then, the status quo shall be maintained.
All right. Another
Next.
question on does gig from Gina Rajesh. Does gig work also include people who are consulting as individuals?
Yep.
All right. Um,
They,
Senthil Kumar asks the next question.
Mr. Rajesh, they can be moved to FTCs for better, terms and conditions, so that they can stay for a longer period of time.
Senthil Kumar Chettiar asks, could you tell us more about single online system, please?
The single online system is nothing but the various returns to be, filed through one single, format. Even web-based online, inspections will be picked up by the government in a random case, and this is how things will move. But again, we await the more, inputs from the governments.
All right. Another last one that we could take difference between floor wages and minimum wages across India, how it can be considered. Kiran asks this question.
See, currently the minimum wages are defined state by states under a number of scheduled of employment, scheduled industries. The scheduled industry, the industries are defined about 30 to 40 or so, and the definitions are defined who is skilled worker, who is unskilled worker, and who is highly skilled worker. Depending on the the geography, the industry A, B, C, and D zones, the minimum wages are defined. Currently the structure is followed. The floor wages is going to be defined based on again geography and the skills level. The skills are going to be taken into account. Maybe whatever the skills that they may be, they will define. Based on that, the minimum wages across India will be applicable, and also it will have implications on the geography. Maybe the Chakan will have something different than Mumbai, or maybe Ambernath may have something different than Mumbai, depending on the geography, the same scales. Okay, thank you. It's going to be very interesting. We await more details from the governments.
All right. So shall we continue or
Yeah, let's move.
all right.
Yeah, we can have a next slide, please. So, friends, here I'm again giving you more highlights on Industrial Relations Code and many more stuff. The Industrial Relations Code will be comprised of three main acts: the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946, and the Trade Union Act 1926. Believe you me, these three acts are so much deterrent to the industry to function smoothly and seamlessly. And I think these rationalization of these acts and the provisions will make things quite easier for the employers, I suppose. And let's see how it goes. And we will present the highlights here. Next slide, please. So, charitable, social, and philanthropic industries are excluded from Industrial Relations Code. Again, I am surprised, but then I would not say, in my opinion, but I would say this could attract some sort of resentment from various corners. But currently, people employed in these organizations are treated differently. Institutions treated differently. The faster adjudication process will be followed. A two-member tribunal is being formed. It's very interesting to see one from judiciary system, the existing a judge or magistrate will be part of this two-member panel, and the second will be a first-class government officer, maybe from department, labor department, or any other department that government may decide. And again, it will be dependent on the state to decide who can that administrative officer will be part of that panel. Okay, so instead of one person, the two members a team will listen to the adjudication disputes. Now, grievance redressal committee is required to be set up by employer if there are more than 20 workers employed, and especially women participation is invited there, as everybody is talking about inclusive inclusiveness, and so on and so forth. Here also, government thought that women participation is very essential. The union recognition has become mandatory now. Okay, the union representing the larger members, okay, will be recognized, and in absence of any majority mustered by any union, or in a situation where there is no union operating in an industry, a negotiating council is required to be set up, which will define and decide the service conditions of that organization. It's very interesting. No retrenchment clause shall apply where less than 300 workers are employed. So this has become, say, for example, in any company where a particular section or particular department, if they want to shut down, and if the company has less than 300 people, I mean, they will be in a far better position today to shut down that unit by following the provisions of retrenchment. They need not approach government in that case. Standing orders are required where 300 or more workers, as I mentioned, in the same case. This is about the retrenchment, but the standing orders, there's a separate chapter in this labor code about standing orders. Standing orders, the working conditions for people employed are to be followed only when they're 300 plus. And I think in many cases it is defined that it can be certified. It needs to be certified by the state government so that no disputes are raised. Workers reskilling fund to be set up. This is again going to be very interesting for the people who are retrenched for whatever reasons, for reskilling them, or maybe making them re-employable. These funds will be utilized. Introduction of fixed term employment, as Yashasvi has mentioned about it. The fixed term employment concept was not there in earlier labor laws, though it was prevalent, but it was not lawfully accepted. It was never mentioned in any of the acts. Now they have formalized this, and any person appointed for a fixed period of time can be called fixed term employee, where the employment can come to an end automatically. No separate notice will be required to be given. The new definition of employee and worker. This is very interesting, very simple. And employees under the definition of employees, supervisors and the managers are covered very well. And in workers, where any person who is drawing salary, any person carrying out unskilled, semi-skilled, manual, technical, and all that stuff of work to be carried out up to supervisory cadre will be covered under the workers category. Next slide, please. It's very interesting to see how the penalties are given in different codes, but I'm covering all the penalties covered in all the 4 codes here. And as we see here, under the new labor codes, the inspector cum facilitator will be there, who will give opportunity to the industry to implement labor laws and they enforce the provisions. And he's expected to advise before initiating any action. For still, if there is any first instance of offense and the fine is enhanced from 50,000 rupees up to 50,000 rupees to 1 lakh, which is the compoundable. The fine can be a compoundable one. And in subsequent commission of offense, same or otherwise, which will be cleared once the rules are out, the fine has been enhanced to 3 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees, which wasn't there earlier. And only in few cases, imprisonment provision is there. And to a large extent, the decriminalization has happened. If I say from 87 provisions were there earlier, where imprisonment provision was there, now it is reduced to only 22. and that too in severe cases, the imprisonment provision has been mentioned. So it's a welcome change now. Next slide, please. Friends, let's look at the now impact on the organizations. I'll try to quickly move through this. Financial impact, I have covered that into 4 parts: financial impact, people impact, operational impact, and compliance impact. Under financial impact, increased spends due to pay structure and gratuity outflow. It's very obvious. And potential reduction in cost of compliance, it's a positive side. For people impact, improved working conditions at 8 hours, the overtime, and many more. The salary on 7th and settlement in 2 days, and so on and so forth. And security due to early payouts, as I mentioned. And permissible deductions are up to 50%, authorized deductions. Under operational impact, HR policies and process will have to be redesigned. Okay. And full and final settlement process also will have to be redesigned. It's going to be interesting to see how large companies are going to see that the no due certificates are obtained in 2 days' time. Maybe under standing orders, this provision could be certified and made from 2 to 20 or 2 to 15. Government may relax this in certain cases. As I mentioned about fixed term contracts, there's going to be flexibility. The compliance impact is going to be very positive, as single registration, single return, self-certification via independent audit. Your auditor can, give a certification, and that can be submitted to the government, provided all the provisions are appropriately, enforced. The potential flexibility in provident fund, as you have seen and read, the employees will have a liberty of opting out of provident fund after 1 year if there are better options available in the private market. Okay, and ban on flash strike. This is interesting. I mean, no employee or no group of employees can go on strike, by giving 14 days of notice or something like that. They have to prove they have to be part. They have to give enough notice, and they have to be part of the recognized union. So that is going to be a relief as well. The next slide, please. And as we speak, there is a quite positive impact for the workforce. When I say workforce, it is largely employees and workers who are covered under these 3 impacts. Financial impact, the gratuity benefit you get from the day one, from the year 1, and a shift in take-home pay may lead to a higher provident fund contribution. And extended social security, as we see, gig, platform workers, and domestic workers will be included. The ESI coverage to hospitals, schools, and small shops. Previously, they were ignored, they were excluded. Now, recently, the ESI Corporation has issued notification and asking all schools, hospitals, and small shops to cover their employees who are working, 10 and above. And also, it has become a voluntary coverage. If any shop or any school or not school or shop or any such institution where less than 10 people are employed, they can voluntarily opt for ESI benefits, which wasn't there earlier. And improved working conditions, the formation of grievance redressal committee, work from home option up to 1 year for working mothers, an annual health checkup for over 40 years of age. Many companies will make it applicable to less than larger population, I'm sure. And setup of safety committee. So these are quite a few, and many positive impact, I must say, for the workforce. And as I mentioned earlier, these codes try to balance out things, the provisions between the industry and the workforce. Next slide, please. So friends, here I am on the last part of my presentation, which is very, very critical for the industry, the HR managers who are sitting here and listening to this webinar or attending this webinar. What's the way forward for employers? The classification of employees, you need to define properly and put them under different categories appropriately. Employee salary structure will have to be properly designed. What components fall under excluded, whether they are more than 50%, then you'll have to adjust the structure. The actuaries will come into picture because the gratuity impact will have to be factored in this salary structure, and the actuaries will have to factor all these liabilities in the balance sheet. Employee benefits, as I mentioned, flexi hiring models. Need to relook at alternate models of hiring. Fixed term contract as an option now, and it's going to be very interesting to see the various segment of employees. You will have apprentices, you will have gig, you will have FTCs, you will have probationers, you will have temporary staff, and you will have permanent workers. It's going to be interesting to say how these flexi models will evolve. Policies and processes, everything is related to these kind of hiring and kind of working conditions that may be evolved during this process. Health, safety, and working conditions. You'll have to align practices with new codes such as annual health checkups and health surveys, which will have to be factored in terms of calendar as well as the impact on the balance sheet. The employee relations, align new aspects relating to retrenchment, standing orders, grievance redressal committee. These are some of the things, particularly this part will have to be very, very carefully drafted and carefully understood. The compliance framework, the robust internal governance framework, periodic diagnostic and reviews will have to be made. Maybe weekly meetings or maybe monthly meetings or maybe quarterly reviews will help organizations to see that they are in line with or aligned with the codes and various aspects of code and the spirit of the codes. So with this, friends, I take a pause here and I welcome the suggestions and welcome the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Suhas sir, as well as Yashashri for sharing such amazing insights and valuable insights with everyone. I'm sure everyone's found this session extremely helpful, useful, and gained a lot of insights on how exactly to implement this way forward. Just so that, firstly, we will start the chat right now. So we will take on a few questions in parallel.
There's Mr. Sunil who has raised a hand. Maybe he wants to ask.
We will be taking the questions that have been raised in the chat. Yes. We will be doing that. So while we are answering the questions, there is a QR code that is also being put up on the slide, please. So this is for, I believe that many of you would be wanting a lot of personalized guidance, and one-on-one consultation is definitely available. You can scan the QR code over here, and we'll also be sharing the link as well through email, and would also appreciate if you can spend some time on our website comply360.in. Now very quickly I'll move into the questions that we've already received, and Yashashri, actually this one's for you. This had come in early on. Related to the example, Shweta asks that when we say basic has to be 50%, is it on CTC or wages? And can we get clarity on the term wages when we say basic has to be 50%? Is it on CTC or wages? And can we get clarity on the term wages?
Yeah. So 50% of basic. So the way in the current scenario, basic includes basic plus DA, that is dearness allowance or variable allowance, or what we call in Hindi or Marathi as Mahagai Bhatta or inflation amount. In the new scheme of things, basic will include three components: the basic, DA, and the retention allowance, or a balancing figure to arrive to a 50% is what is mentioned. And basic will be the 50% of the total monthly gross wages. So again, CTC is a very large concept. Cost to company includes many other components, like there is a insurance that the company is procuring for the whole organization, wherein they are factoring a cost towards each employee. There is a gratuity cost that is given to an LIC policy. Again, it is factored per employee, or maybe many other costs per employee wise the company factors, which is the concept of CTC. Whereas the monthly gross salary, which includes all emoluments, your tax deductions, your statutory deductions, and your net take home salary. So your basic 50% will be the 50% of the monthly gross salary.
To make it little simple, the the total of excluded emoluments should not be the 50% of the CTC. The balance portion will have to be added in basic ADA on retaining allowance.
All right. Thank you for answering that. Next, we have Ajit Kumar, who asks whether gratuity is calculated based on pro rata basis for fixed term employment as per the Social Security Code.
Of course.
All right. Prachi Jadhav, HR manager, asks, formation of negotiation council is for any industry, any type of firm. Skilled labor is an employee now. Are there any particular provisions in case of absconding? And are we still liable to pay?
Vishesh, please answer. I'm replying one question.
Okay. Can you just repeat the first part of the question, Shanmitha?
Yes, the first part is formation of negotiation council is for any industry, any type of firm, question mark.
I guess where in the code it has been categorically mentioned negotiating council will be where there are multiple trade unions. Okay. And the power of the negotiating council is that amongst all the trade unions that exist, the trade union which has more than 51% of total employees registered with them, that is the negotiating council. So it is not any industry. It is an industry wherein you have multiple trade unions, or you can say a large manufacturing sector, or where you have more than 300 workmen at any point in time who are working.
All right. Piyush Shah asks, so where can we get the notification in Chhattisgarh state regarding this code on wages implementation? Please guide. So Piyush, you can log into our Comply 360 website and subscribe to the page. We will be updating all the latest notifications out there, and we'll also email it to you. Moving on, Manas Singh asks, can gig workers be engaged in core activities for e-com business where the business depends real-time orders, as there is no clarity where gig workers can be engaged and their working condition?
So would you like to take this question?
Can you repeat it, because there are
So
a
this
couple
was
of
regarding
messages
gig
coming on my
workers
WhatsApp.
engaged in, yeah, this was regarding gig workers being engaged in core activities for e-com business, where the business depends on real-time orders because there is no clarity where gig workers can be engaged as well as their working conditions. So can they be engaged is the question.
See, as of today, the status quo remains, okay? And they can continue to operate in the space where they are currently being engaged. Unless they are changed the conditions and the roles are redefined by a concerned state, they can continue to, maintain the status quo.
All right. We request everyone to write their questions in the chat, please.
I've got a lot of questions and I was a
Yeah.
little tempted there. There was one question about Mr. Sunil Basakhetre raised. He asked me about the full and final settlement. So I think we covered it. We mentioned that within 2 days, the full and final settlement will have to be done. From the day of separation.
All right. So, both of y'all, we have a lot of questions actually asking that when to implement these changes. So, do we have to revise salary with immediate effect? That's Ankita asks. Ashish is asking, can a company now, post 21st November, restructure their existing salary to meet this 50%. If not done, they may end up paying retirals on high wages. So a lot of questions on how soon to implement are being asked.
Yeah, as I mentioned
So I
earlier,
would like to take this question. Everybody should start working on the guidelines of the court. And but as we had categorically mentioned at in the beginning, that there are still notifications, there is still an official gazette which will be announced on how the actual implementation will happen. Though now they have made it clear that once the acts come from 21st November, the new acts will prevail. There is still a window, as I mentioned. See, whenever an act comes, practical challenges all the government bodies understand. It is not that today the act came and tomorrow onwards the change has to be implemented. Every government body gives a decent timeline for implementation. Maybe it's 6 months, 1 year. I remember categorically in the Code of Wages, it has been mentioned that 1 year timeline will be given for the implementation of the changes. Also in the IR code, see, there are provisions like now there will not be the labor courts anymore. They will move everything to the industrial tribunals. But then there has to be something where the current cases which are pending, there should be a mechanism for adjudication. So these clarities will have to come by the virtue of the rules. So we have to wait for that. The guideline, the way ahead has been led. So we should start working on that. But we should wait for the notification and not panic as to the implementation should start right now.
to
All
make it
right.
more concise, you can prepare your CTC structures and keep it ready. Maybe the moment the date of implementation is announced, from there, 45 days or 90 days window will be available. You can implement from that day. There is one
Super.
question. There is one question raised by Mr. Sunil about the full and final settlement. If the formality is not completed in 2 days, what happens? Well, at the moment, I can logically say, well, it can be definitely extended if there are some complexities with the consent of the separating employee, and this can be recorded, and such record can be built so that no dispute will be raised, and such kind of practical difficulties, as Yashasvi said, will be taken into account, and as we move forward the government will keep amending the rules. Just to give you one example, in 2016 or 17, if I'm not mistaken, the GST reforms came into practice. From then till today, there are about 3,000 plus changes the government made in that act. 3,000 plus. So mind you, this is also possible in the case of these courts. So we can be rest assured about it, provided we represent to the government in appropriate manner, and make them hear about our pains and grief.
All
Yes,
right.
over to Shanmitha.
Yeah, on a similar note, it was on the salary part where Dipali asked that if the salary is supposed to be processed on 7th, but if it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, in case if it's delayed, what will happen if it is
A day
processed?
So
prior,
here
a
it
day
is
prior to Saturday.
categorically mentioned that you have to pay it 1 day prior, not beyond 7th.
Even if it falls on a weekend, you have to
Yes, you have
do
to
it
pay
a
1 day
day prior.
prior, not the day after that, as we generally used to do in the past. But now it will have to be processed on 6th if it is a Diwali or if it is national holiday or something like that.
All right. Another interesting one on maternity. Could you, by Snehal, could you please clarify whether the provision for allowing female employees to work from home during maternity leave up to 1 year will remain a mutually agreed arrangement between employer and employee, or whether the act is expected to be amended to make this a mandatory requirement?
Yes, Ashri, want to take this
Yeah,
forward?
so it is not mentioned that it is mandatory, but the new code of social security gives more weightage to the work from home arrangements. Okay. So in the current scheme of things, work from home is not recognized as a formal work arrangement, but it has been suggested by virtue of this code that a formal recognition to work from home for certain class of employees can be given, especially post maternity leave for the next 1 year. There can be a formal recognition given for work from home, or employees who are working in distant or remote locations, they can be now recognized as full-time employees. So this mention is not there in any of our past acts.
Okay. Another quick one. Randall Miranda asks, is it mandatory to mention the CTC structure in the appointment letter? The code doesn't specify this.
So how are you giving the appointment letters currently? You can just continue giving it that way. But as we mentioned that the code says that now giving appointment letters to blue collared or the unorganized workforce is mandatory. We have an experience that in the lower cadre of hierarchy, people were not really serious about getting appointment letters, or the employers were not serious about issuing them. Now, no more this is an okay scenario. You have to mandatorily issue an appointment letter every class of employee
Covering the CTC.
covering the CTC.
All right. So I think we've covered quite a lot of questions. We have almost around 100 plus questions that have come in, and it would be practically impossible to take each and every one of them. However, we will try to respond to them after this session. Any other specific insights or points that the speakers would like to add before we conclude?
Yes, Ashri.
So I would just say that the courts have given a golden guideline for the way ahead. As we reiterate, wait for the rules and the gazetted notification, which is expected in mid-January, as per as whatever news we are getting till date. The announcement of the code has happened on multiple occasions from 2019 onwards, and many a times it was like, okay, they will be implemented now in the next month, 2 months ahead, but actual implementation stopped. But now with a formal announcement, we can assume that by the next financial year, we have a clarity as to what is to be done going ahead. And from the next financial year, for sure, the implementation will be done. Of course, it will take time as far as the procedural and the transactional the transactional activities are dependent.
So I would like to conclude here by saying thanking each participant who has joined in for this webinar and given us an opportunity to present the highlights, impact, and many other things. We look forward to having more interactions going forward. And secondly, I would say stay hungry, stay foolish. Read as much as you can for the next 3 months, as you would have read and heard many times about all these provisions that you have heard from us today. More and more reading, more and more absorption of information will keep them having clarity. On top of it, all of them are welcome on Prom 360-degree website to get more and more clarity. They can raise their questions any given time and they will be attended for sure. I must say only this much. Thank you so much, Shanmitha. Thank you so much, Yashashree, and the entire technical team who is behind this webinar, and also the marketing team for putting up this webinar in a great manner. Thank you so much. And each one of you, thank you very much.
Thank you
Have
once
a
again
great
to our
day.
esteemed speakers and our audience who joined us here today. Don't forget to scan the code and book in your consultations, as well as reach out to us on comply360.in. We will share the details over email as well as the PPT that we've covered. I really hope you found this webinar very insightful and helpful, and keep following us for more such knowledge session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. What was the last?